about.
I want Ruth to be here. I don't even want to talk about it without Ruth.
Oh, that's so sweet. But you're going to have to,
I know.
because I can't wait.
I know. It's all right. It's all
It's
good.
been an exciting week.
It has
I'm,
been.
looking forward to weekend review for you to tell us a little bit about the evening
Yes.
and the categories and the award and just,
Oh my goodness.
man, I tell you what, it's that's been exciting. It's been exciting. I felt like a mother hen. I was just
I wish
waiting,
you
waiting,
had
waiting.
been
To How
there.
much time? How much time?
I just wish you had been there. I really do. You'd
But
enjoyed
that
it.
was good. That was good, good, good. And we got a good guest on tonight. You're going to
Yes.
do the bio,
I
right?
will. I'll
Bio
do it. I
read.
have it right here.
And I will try to step in for Miss Ruth in the part that she does, and talking about the writing journey. And then we have
Okay.
some questions. And then we're really going to let Edward tell the story.
Story.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
And
Good.
I think that's gonna
All
be.
right, everybody, the open's coming up now.
All
All
right.
righty, Alan.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Alan.
much, sir. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Authors Up. Authors Up, Authors Up. You have tuned in to ALH Broadcasting, part of the Streaming Inspirational Broadcast Network. And you see, we are missing one component
Yes.
of our
We're missing,
program.
we're missing one of the bronze girls.
Miss Ruth is out of town this weekend, so
Yes.
she's not going to be on with us, but that's not going to stop us from talking about her because you know how we do.
Yep.
So we're going to be
Somebody
talking
tell her.
about her a little bit. I see Linda's on the line. Good evening, Linda. Glad to have you with us.
Everybody.
And there's Miss Angie Oliphant from South Carolina. She is on with us tonight. And you know how we usually, Victoria, I don't know what we're going to do with you.
They'll do
But
my
you know
queen
what?
wave.
We're gonna let her do the queen wave because I know she's definitely feeling like a queen tonight. I know that we had talked about the Achi Awards, and both Ruth and Victoria had been nominated
Yes.
to receive the award, and I told them this week would be an easy week in review
Yes.
because they both won. They both won. Ruth won as radio personality of the year.
She did. I
And
was just screaming.
I know you were. I know you were. And Victoria won Woman of Inspiration. So look, just a little bit. Just tell me a little bit about what that night was like for you because they did it last night, and some of the I think uh, Ruth's speech, her acceptance speech, is out there on Facebook for those who want to see.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit, just a little bit, just a little
It
bit
was
about yesterday.
amazing. It was just amazing. Archie is all about women supporting women,
Mhm.
and they created this space for women's achievements to be celebrated. And for me, it was just I was just glad to be in the room with everybody and just see the and everybody looked so nice. People came in with their gowns and Oh, somebody had on a crown, and it was just amazing. So I literally sat there most of the night in my category. Well, I was in two categories, but the first category I was in, that was the first one. That was done and over with. I didn't win that one. Ruth and I did not win that one. We were good. But sat there, then Ruth's name was called for hers, and it was literally almost to the end. And I was sitting there like I had changed my shoes into my flat because my feet was hurt, trying to be cute. And when they called my name, the tears just flowed. Just and I got up there. I don't even remember what I said because it was so stupid, silly. But I remember saying thank you to God most of all, for seeing me because I don't do what I do, try to inspire people um for glory or for an award. But this let me know that God sees me, and He and I know what that means. He sees
Yes.
He sees me when I don't feel visible or I feel bad about how I feel or I'm in pain. But this was to let others know that this is what it looks like to push through the pain, and to know that that was acknowledged. I'm really gonna stop talking because I'll start crying again, and I've just been on the verge of crying since last night. But it was an amazing evening, and for Ruth to win her, she was just now she had a speech prepared, and she was just like See, I'm gonna talk about it. She was a little nervous too because I think we both just didn't think we were gonna win with all these talented, amazing, wonderful women all together. To have your name called, it was overwhelming, it's humbling, and I'm just so very grateful. I really am just grateful.
Well, I am so proud of both of you and the authors up ALH Broadcasting
Thank
family and
you.
SIBN, and all of us are just elated that your hard work was recognized in such a
Yeah.
phenomenal way. So we're
Thank
just
you so
happy
much,
for you
everybody.
tonight,
Thank
and
you.
we'll be talking about it a lot going into the future. It's just gonna have to, I don't know, sort of come up in conversation,
Okay, all right, all right.
because next week when Ruth is here, we'll have to
We'll
talk about
talk about it again because
talk
I
about,
definitely.
so we're gonna go back and forth with us. But tonight we have a very, very special guest with us. And Victoria, why don't you go on and introduce him to our listeners?
I surely will. But you didn't have anything you were gonna share about this week? You're good.
Who can top two
Winning an award, right? Okay,
award
okay.
winners from Archie? No, I didn't have anything to
All
report.
right. Well, let me tell you about our guest so we can bring him on. Our guest tonight is Edward Gigangi. Is that correct? Gigangi.
Ganji.
Yes, he is a retired customer service executive who was born and raised in New York City. He and his wife now live in Hillsborough, North Carolina. Diganji is the author of published nonfiction articles as well as short stories. He is a popular book club presenter and podcast guest. We're going to talk tonight about his book, The Gift Best Given, a memoir, and it is his first full length book. So, after a short break, we'll be back with Mr. Edward. So, he'll be able to tell us all about his book, and we look forward to having him.
Well, good evening, Edward. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Authors Up. We're so
Welcome.
glad to have you with us tonight. Good to
Well,
have you.
Thank you, Andrea, and congratulations, Victoria.
Thank you so much.
I'm
Thank
sure
you.
that's well deserved.
It
I
is.
appreciate it.
It is. It
Thank
really
you.
is. Well, Edward, I told you that I was going to tell you why uh, I enjoyed this book so much. It gave me a peek behind the scenes to something that I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoy, and that is ice skating.
Yes.
I remember as a little girl going to see the ice skating shows when I was in Washington, D.C., and just watching the skaters glide across the ice and the
Yes.
costumes and the colors and all of those things. So I felt like I was a reporter behind the scenes, and I just got to, really uh, get in on some secrets and stuff, So I really, really enjoyed it, and it is an amazing story. I want to ask you a little bit about your writing journey because it says that you have written articles and you've written short stories, but this is your first full length book. And it
That's
is
right.
something that's so personal to you. And I want to, I don't even know where to start because there's so many things that I want to touch on and want the listeners to know about in terms of how this story even came to be. So would you start us off there, Edward, and just tell us how you came to write this memoir about your mom?
Yeah, well, I was adopted at birth and really did nothing through my youth and my adulthood until 2017 when I was approaching my 70th birthday to go and delve into who the woman was that had given me up for adoption at the time of my birth. And I was very fortunate that my adoption had been privately arranged. And
Mm,
that's an interesting story all in itself. But what that left me with, or what my parents left me with, was a copy of my adoption decree, which had
mm,
their names on it and the name of their attorney, who I somehow recalled from my youth, and one other name, a woman's name who I didn't recognize, but intuitively knew that that's my birth mother.
mhm.
And so I went to the library and I got on ancestry.com. I plugged in that name, and there was a tentative moment where my finger was over the keyboard and said, "Should I press that key?"
Wow.
And and I did that, and a wealth of information emerged. There were census records and, yeah, vital type records, but the one that really impressed me, or the one that drew me, was a an immigration document which was dated a year after I was born,
Wow.
for travel from Miami, Florida to Rio de Janeiro. And
Wow.
that's really where the journey began. That's
Mhm.
really where it was. The document was written in Portuguese.
Oh.
It listed my mother's name. It listed her address, which, Victoria, you said you came from New York City. She lived 15 minutes away from where I grew up.
Oh, wow.
I could have gotten on the Q44 bus
I remember that
and
bus.
and taken her right to her street corner.
Oh.
Wow.
So, yeah, but the interesting part was it said her occupation was an artista,
And
and
I
I had no clue what an
That
artista
was.
was.
mhm,
And
mhm.
it also had her picture, and
Mm,
that was really the earth shaking piece. And
mhm,
that's where the journey began. A lot of research from there, but as far as the writing process went, as I began that search, I took very, very good notes.
mhm,
I
mhm.
wish I had organized them better, because now if I want to go look for something, all I've got are notebooks, and I have to go flipping through pages hoping to find it. But at the same time, I became involved in a memoir group at one of our local libraries.
Okay.
So I said, this, if anything, is a memoir, or has pieces that lend itself to it. It's my search. So every piece of the search got recorded and edited and fine tuned as as a step in that search and as a memoir. And I eventually wound up with a fairly healthy stack of those essays from the time I first found that document
Wow.
to a couple of years later when we, you know, were burying my mother's remains.
Mhm.
And that's a story in itself, but that's another chapter.
Well, Edward, I know that you have a lot of people look for their birth parents,
Mhm.
but I don't know of many who end up being taken on the kind of journey that you embarked upon to just delve into who she was and what she did and the places that she went, and something was very instrumental with beginning to gather that information. Tell us about the box.
Yes.
Yes. It took some time. I had my mother's birth name, obviously. And then I found out, or I found another document which lists, it was actually her marriage certificate from 7 years later, which
Oh,
listed her birth name plus another name, Norris. And
Mhm.
I ultimately found out that she had adopted a stage name
okay.
very early in her career. And she left home at 17
Wow.
to
Hmm.
travel across the country to join an ice skating troupe in British Columbia. And I found out her name was Norris, and that tended to open things up. So I looked for Genevieve Norris. By that point, I found out that she had been an ice skater, and a, a blog popped up. Somebody who just recorded their day-to-day activities, and this was a picker in Marietta, Georgia, somebody who went to flea markets and antique markets and just bought little items thinking that she'd resell them. And when I opened up the page to this blog, there were several pictures of my mother. There was a copy of her first
Unbelievable.
professional contract. And I
Oh.
looked at it and I said, well, look at that. And she explained, the woman explained, I have no idea who this woman was, but it was in the midst
Wow.
of Women's History Month. And she thought it was a glamorous era and a glamorous woman. So she bought it. So I got onto Facebook and I had the lady's name and I started searching and I found three people with the same name,
Mhm.
only one in Georgia, and she had associations with an antiques mall. So I said, gotta be her.
Her.
So I sent her a message on Facebook and in all my correspondence, and I corresponded with lots of people as I searched. I sent her a message saying, I'm investigating a possible family relationship and I saw this information. Do you still have it? And probably about 10 minutes later, I got a message back saying, yes, I do have it. I'd love to talk to you, but I'm busy right now. I'll get back to you.
Oh.
So I took a deep breath and I sat there probably all evening watching the screen of the computer and no message ever came. And it was probably the better part of a week. And finally I said, I'll send another message. And this time I was not subtle. I said, yeah, I'd really like to talk to you. Those pictures are of my birth mother. I was
Yeah.
adopted.
Mhm.
Within 5 minutes, the telephone rang.
Oh my goodness.
And the lady said, I am so sorry. I was busy and I forgot you. You need to
Oh,
come here right now. Now,
Oh.
we're in North Carolina. She was in Georgia. So,
ah,
come here right
But
now is a
now it's
little
not
bit,
not
not an
around
yeah.
the
option.
corner.
But probably within a week, my wife and I were in the car and on the way to Atlanta.
Oh
Oh,
goodness.
And all the way down, we said, okay, this woman is in business. She has something which has value.
Mhm.
How much do you think we could afford to pay for this if she'll sell it?
mhm.
And we debated it. I don't know that we ever came up with a price. My wife is very good that way. I think if I said I will pay anything she asks, she would have said go for it. But we got down there, we met the woman, her husband came in, they came to our hotel, and we
Mhm.
spent a few hours together going through the contents of that box.
Wow.
And there were a stack of promotional photographs of other skaters, and all of them were personalized and autographed to my mother.
Wow.
Oh
And I
wow.
was thinking, okay, now if I could find one of these people or two of these people still alive, maybe they could tell me about my mother. So I started writing down names, and Dan, who is the woman's husband, asked me, "What is it you're doing?" And I explained what I was thinking, and he just shook his head. He said, "You don't need to do that." He said, "We've just been holding this, this box. This is yours." He said, "We've just been waiting for you to arrive."
Oh
And
wow.
it was the first of
Love
so
it.
many acts of generosity by people.
Mm.
And they just sort of pushed, I'm sorry, they just sort of pushed that box across the table at me and said, "Take it."
That's
Wow.
And
Wow.
amazing. That is
yeah,
amazing.
Edward,
it was wonderful.
with all of the information that you began to gather and the different places that it came from and the different people that you were able to talk to, was there ever a time that you got discouraged? Did you ever get to a point of saying, I don't know that I really want to keep doing this or keep working at this? Because that's got to be a daunting task, as exhilarating as it might be to learn, more about your mom and her life. But did you ever have those moments where you thought, maybe this isn't what I should be doing?
Mm, I I would tell you that at any given time, I was probably chasing down two or three or four rabbit holes.
Okay.
Hmm.
And for the most part, they were active and rewarding. The only one which seemed to be a discouragement for a period of time was I was trying to find my maternal half brother who I had discovered existed.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yes.
And again, I sent him a letter saying, "Hi, you don't know me, but I'm pursuing a possible family relationship. I think
Hmm.
you and I are related." And the letter came back as undeliverable.
Oh.
Oh.
So I traced down another post office box, and I actually put the same letter into a different envelope and sent it. And that one came back as, addressee unknown. I went
Oh
through
my goodness.
4 or 5 of those, and I was thinking I would give up.
Mhm.
And actually, when I went back to the blog of those people down in Georgia, I noticed that somebody had made a comment that years ago he had grown up with my half brother.
Oh
He had
wow.
known my half brother's parents. And I looked, and it didn't have any way to get in touch with him, but there's somebody else who I'd been corresponding with. And I told him that. He said, "Get me his name, I'll find him." And probably within an hour, he sent me back an email saying, "Here's his email address." And I,
Oh my good. Look how these
I
connections just came
oh,
together.
this
Yes.
has been
Goodness.
3 years like that, and they're still happening. But,
Oh.
so I contacted that person, and again, I said, "I think I might possibly be related." And he called me, and we had a
Mhm.
discussion. He told me that my half brother had been in a calamitous fire in 2015
Wow.
Wow.
and had spent the better part of 3 years either in the hospital
Mhm.
or in a rehabilitation facility. And that's why he hadn't been getting my letters. And I
Wow.
said, "Will you please pass on this message? I'd really like to talk to him." So probably a week later, he called me back and he said, here's your brother's phone number. He didn't know at that point he was my brother.
Okay.
He
My
said, "But
my.
he's expecting your call." And I called him, and it was, he and I could not be any less alike. And yeah, we had a very brief conversation. And this was the first of several episodes where he said, and I told him why I was calling and what the relationship was. And there was a pause. He said, "Okay, just now, what kind of kin are we?" And I explained. He said, "Well, I have to go now. I've got to take my wife for a walk." Turned out that his wife was also in that same rehab
Oh
facility,
wow.
and
Oh.
that's where they had met. He said, "But I'll call you back." And it was like the lady in Georgia. The call never came,
Mm.
and finally it did, and we had another good conversation. But it ended with, "Now tell me one more time, what kind of kin are we?" And I would tell him, I said, "You and I have the same mother.
Oh.
We have different fathers."
Mhm.
And there was just silence. And, and that, as I think back on it, that has to be rather a kind of an earth shaking message to get.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
But we arranged for my wife and I to travel to Georgia again, which is where he was living, and to visit with him. And we went down there, and his friend, who had been the person who put us together, was there with us. And we took my brother out to dinner, and we talked. And periodically I'd go and wander off someplace. We went to Golden Corral because we thought it's a good place. If the moment got awkward, you could walk away.
Yes. Plenty
So
of distractions there.
I'd go and get some more. I'd go and get some more salad. He'd get up. He'd go and get a piece of steak. But on the way back, we were talking again, and he said, "Cheryl, this is his wife, wants to know what kind of kin we are." I said, "Ted, yeah." I said, "We've talked about it before." I said, "You and I are half brothers. We have the same mother," and you could hear the the brain going.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And he said, "I don't know how that can be." He said, "My mama and my papa always ice skated together."
Wow.
I said, "I don't think so."
Oh wow.
I said, "Yeah." I know where our mother was when I was conceived. She
Mhm.
was in San Francisco. She was with the Ice Follies, and it was August of 1947. And when we got back to his apartment, he disappeared into the bedroom, and he came out with a big roll of posters. It was about the size you would see in a movie marquee.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
And he unrolled the first one. It was from 1945, and it was from Holiday on Ice. And he said, "My mama and my papa always skated together." And he had the list of all the performers, and he ran his hand down the list, and there was his daddy, Ted Meza.
Mhm.
And he kept on going because Norris would come after Meza, and she was not there. So he rolled that one up and went to 1946. Same story. And
Wow.
he unrolled 47. I said, "Ted," I said, "Your daddy may be there. Your mother was with a different group in a different place."
Yeah.
And he looked at it. He kind of went down. There's Ted Meza, no Genevieve Norris. He rolled up the posters, took them back into the bedroom, came out with a big photo album. And my mother kept immaculate records photographically of every
Mhm.
place she had been. They were
Wow.
labeled, they were in date order. If
Oh
there were
my
other
goodness.
people in the picture, she had their name there. And he started in 1942, where she first started skating. And I'm sure some of your listeners may remember the little black and white brownie snapshots.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so she started in 42, and we flipped the page, and a couple of pages later we 1943, and this went on. Now we got to the end of 1946, and I stopped him. I said, "Ted, I said, you're going to flip that page." I said, I know my mother was born, or I was conceived in San Francisco in August of 1947. And he took a deep breath. Now every photograph in there was black and white. As he flipped the page, in the middle of that page, the next page, was the photograph that I don't know
Have
how
in the
well to
book.
do this.
Yes.
How I
Yeah.
used on my cover. It was color.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
what is it labeled? It's labeled San Francisco, August 1947. And he just sort of looked at it, and I wanted to say, "I told you so." But I didn't. Yeah, I just explained. I said, "Your daddy traveled with the Holiday on Ice for years." I said, "But, I said, our mother and her partner joined with Ice Follies in January, and then Ice Follies spent the summer in San Francisco every year. That's where it was taken, and that's where I come from." And
Okay.
and he kind of folded up the book and put that one away, and he came back and he said, "Would you like a beer?" And we had a beer, and we just sort of made chit chat about things other than
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
our mother. And he told me a little bit about his accident,
Oh, okay.
everything else. And finally, I said, "Ted, I brought you a piece of paper. I made a copy. This is my adoption decree."
Mhm.
And I said, "It has my parents' name, and it has their lawyer's name, and it has her mother's name on it, her signature. And by that time, I knew her signature
Yes.
because it was very distinctive. And I handed it to him, and he looked at it. He just stared at it, and he handed it back to me. And I said, "That's a photostat." I said, "It's got no real value except to me and to you."
Right.
I said, "If you would like to keep it, that's fine." So he did, and we left him down there. Later that week, he and I spoke by telephone. He said, "Well, I took that paper down to the rehab facility where I was."
Hmm.
And he had a trusted person down there who I think was the administrator. And he said, "Well, I showed it to Mike." I said, "Well, what did Mike say?" He said, "Well, he looked at it and he asked me if that's Mama's signature." I said, "What did you say?" He said, "Well, I told him, yeah, that's
Oh
Mama's
yeah.
signature, okay." And again, there's just silence. I said, "Well, what did Mike say?" He said, "Well, Ted, if that's your Mama's signature, it looks like you've got yourself a brother." And from that moment on, there was never a question, never a doubt. And
Wow.
he's been more than embracing. And we
Yeah.
talk frequently. We visited several times. A
Good.
number of the photographs in the book come from his collection, his mother's album.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What a
So
treasure cove that was when you first
oh,
saw
Yes.
that. Oh my
Yes.
goodness.
yeah,
Yes.
the Pickers box was the real turning point. But then,
Mhm.
Hmm.
then having all of that information, the photographs that Genevieve had, that my brother still had.
Yes.
And those
So
those are priceless. I so enjoyed them and so glad that you included them in the book.
Yes.
They're
yeah,
just
there
beautiful,
are so
beautiful
many
memories. Oh
more.
my
Yeah,
gosh.
there really
Really?
are. And the
Yeah.
photographs of the people who gave pictures to her.
Hmm.
The women were so young and so
Hmm.
beautiful.
Yeah.
At the time, she was probably the oldest of that group, and she was only 22.
Wow.
Wow.
And it's funny, we did make contact with one of the women whose pictures was in there.
Really?
Yeah, and she was a remarkable woman. She took some searching, but I found her son, and he called up. I did the same thing. I didn't. By that point I was finished with the smoke screen. I just wrote and said, "This is a picture of your mother. I'm looking for things about my mother."
Yeah.
And he called up. He was excited. He said, "I'm going to go and I'm going to talk to my mother." And he called back a couple of days later, and he said, "My mom, yeah, remembers your mother, remembers this picture, and she'd love to talk to you."
Oh, what
I said, "Oh,
Awesome.
that's
how
great." He said,
priceless, like you said. Oh my
"Yeah." He said, "There's
goodness.
only one problem." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Mom's in a memory care facility."
Okay.
I said,
Okay.
"Oh no!" And
Okay.
he must have understood what I was feeling. He said, "The bad news is she can't remember what she had for breakfast this morning.
But
The
she
good
remember
news is she could tell you every day of 1947."
that's
Wow.
something.
Isn't that
Isn't that
something?
something?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And
really
we talked by phone for over an hour, and she was a delight. And my wife and I traveled to Minneapolis and went and visited with her sometime later and spent
awesome.
4 hours with her.
Awesome.
Wow.
Awesome.
Wow.
Victoria, do you have a question for Edward? I could let him talk for
No. No.
but, but
Because I've just been
unfortunately we don't have that
enjoying.
much
I know
time.
we only have a few minutes, but I've been enjoying listening to the story. And on Authors Up, I always say this is my tagline, get the book. And I
That's
want
right.
our
That's
listeners
right.
and our viewers to get the book. What a story. I'm just really impressed about how God connected all those dots for you.
Yes.
And it
It
is a
was
blessing. And I have said more than one time that Facebook has connected us in ways we don't even understand fully. I don't think the creators of Facebook knew what they were really doing when they
Mhm.
created a platform, because I've been able to get in touch with my classmates, from back in the day, but nothing like the story that you're telling
it
tonight.
can be used for a great deal of good. It can
Yes.
be used for bad too,
Well, we
but
know that, but we
yeah,
try to
there's a
focus on the
lot of
good.
good there if it's used well.
Mhm.
That is
And you
awesome.
you know you you talked about God blessing me with the ability to connect all these dots. I think the
Yeah.
greatest blessing was, my mother had the resources to manage her pregnancy in
Mhm.
secret, which I feel terrible for her to have
Yeah,
to
so
have
wait.
done that. She managed to go to a place where she was cared for, and at a time when terminating a birth was not an acceptable thing, she
Exactly.
had the option, and she weighed all the possibilities, and she made the most difficult decision, I think, which
Yes.
was, I'm going to have the baby and I'm giving him away.
Right.
And back then you didn't get a lot of choices. She created her choices. She
How
had
about that?
a list of what she wanted for me. And and she
That's
was blessed, and my
amazing.
adoptive parents were blessed. They All those pieces came together, and
Yes.
here I am.
Look at that. Look at that. Well, we talked about a little bit about you writing this book, but in your bio you talked about articles and short stories. Are they available anywhere for us to read?
Actually, they're not. Well, yeah,
Okay.
they could probably be traced down.
Oh.
Yeah, I've written about everything from fly fishing to Appaloosa horses to adoption. Yeah,
Mhm.
November is National Adoption Awareness Month, and I
Okay.
I did author an article which is going to be published in a number of places in New York and in
Good.
North Carolina.
Mhm.
Uh, Not in widely, they're local journals, local magazines.
Hmm.
It's very possible that if you Google and use my name in adoption,
Okay.
other than this book, one of those might come up.
Hmm.
Well, I like the way you say that. Google you. We have a term that we joked on here. You are Googleicious. If we can Google your name, you are Googleicious.
Google is our friend.
He is. He is. I love Google.
Definitely.
Do you
But
know what
where?
That's
the interest
something.
Yeah, go ahead. Go
the
ahead.
the interesting thing was is when I was a young child, I used to ask my adoptive father, where was I born?
Mhm.
And I don't know if he might have just felt awkward given the
Right.
circumstances, but yeah, he said, well, here in New York. I said, no, what hospital?
Mhm.
He said, well, it was some little hospital that on the east side. What hospital? Well, it doesn't exist anymore. And the hospital didn't exist. I found out that the hospital actually closed down in the early 1950s. It was called the
Wow.
Lexington Hospital. It
Wow.
was on the corner of 55th Street and Lexington Avenue. And unless something has changed, it's probably the only thing on Google, or the
That
only thing that
That
you
you
would
can't
Google that is
find
not there.
that is
I
not there.
I went through pages and pages, and the
wow.
only other mention I found was somebody on an adoption site saying, I was born at Lexington Hospital. Does anyone know anything about it? I
Wow.
eventually kind of backed into it by searching in a 1948 Manhattan telephone directory. And there was Manhattan Hospital, there was a phone number, and so I think I Googled the telephone number at that point.
Uh,
And
I
all of a sudden I started finding information.
I think I have an idea for your next book. Is you
Okay.
sound like a great FBI agent. You can find it out. Ask
Edward
Edward
Di
the guy.
Gangi,
He can find
FBI.
it out. If you want to find it, talk to Edward.
I'm going to go and get myself a badge.
Absolutely. Because and my husband loves ancestry. He just loves finding about his family, and he's got pages and everybody linked to everybody. And actually, a cousin of mine found us because my husband had all these links out there to the family. So
Right.
ancestry.com is really a good thing. And it's just hearing your story tonight is just wonderful. Tell our listeners and our viewers where they can find your book and how they can get in touch with you.
Well, they can find the book pretty much in any independent bookstore. It can be
Okay.
ordered there.
Okay.
It could be ordered through any of the online retailers. Obviously, Amazon is the biggest one, and
Yeah.
it's available there both as a print book or as an ebook.
Okay.
On my website, which is www.digangi, Digangi, author.com,
Okay.
they can order a book using a credit card, and I'll be happy to sign it and and personalize it and mail it out. These books go
Awesome.
out the next day, and
Okay.
I've fulfilled lots and lots of requests that way. Um, so I guess those are the three best options at this point.
Good, good. Like I said,
And
listeners, y'all gotta get the book. I mean,
Yes,
there's so
yes,
much more in the book that we were not able to talk about tonight. But
yeah.
just hearing that little bit, I tell you, I'm just I'm just impressed with you that
well,
you hung
thank
in
you,
there
thank you.
and did all that and found out all this information about your mom. It's beautiful. Tell you, my
Yeah, I
cheeks
think
hurt from smiling so much.
yeah,
It's,
there are two parts. I've told you an awful lot about my search, and the other part is,
Yeah.
are my mother's travels from the time she left home
yes,
to the time she placed me for adoption, and that's a
Wow.
story all to itself. And it was unexpected that I wrote a book that kind of became a tribute to her,
Yes.
because
yes,
I think she was a very focused and strong woman who was ready to do the right thing. She had
yeah.
a quote unquote moral compass,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
she followed it. She knew what was right, and she pursued it. If I had one regret out of this whole story, it was she passed away in 2014. I started to search in 2017.
Oh wow.
I would
Yeah.
like to have been
I've
there
met
to tell
her.
her.
Yes.
I just wanted to tell her you did good.
Yes.
The tough
Yes,
Yes.
choice you made worked out for the best.
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, I tell you what, this has been delightful, delightful, and you are right. There's so much to her story. She was a remarkable woman. When to have left home so early. I mean,
Yes.
16. I can't imagine
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
traveling the way that
Not
she
today.
traveled
Mm-mm.
No,
and
not
you know,
today.
not
No.
not even
Mm-mm.
then.
Yeah,
That's a
she
lot.
was a remarkable woman, and she
Yes.
continued a career up almost up to the time that she passed away in 1988.
And
I
You
used
that's
know,
to
that's
love
she,
those ice
amazing.
capades too in New York. Oh man, I would go
yeah,
every year. I
Yes,
had to go see the ice capades. Loved
that's
it.
right. That's right. I loved it. Loved it. Well, Edward, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being with us
well,
tonight and
thank you
for
for inviting
sharing
me.
sharing such a wonderful story. Listeners, The Gift Best Given, a memoir.
Yes.
You want to get it.
Yes.
You want to
Get the
have it.
book.
You want to read it. It is wonderful. It is wonderful. And I don't know how you managed to do it and get it all together and write it so beautifully, but you have done a wonderful job. And I know that she would be very, very proud
I
of
agree.
I
what
love to
you've
hear
done
that. Thank you
in her
so
Agree. I
lifetime.
much.
I
agree.
know that you would. Well, that's it for us for tonight, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back here next week. We are always here on Sunday nights at 7 p.m.
7 p.m.
You can find us any other time. We'll be right here at 7
Well, they can find us on
on Sunday.
Saturdays at 7 for a
Saturdays
replay.
at 7, there will be a replay. Absolutely, Victoria. And so if you missed us today, if you enjoyed the program today, share with somebody else and tell them to tune in on Saturday evening so that they can hear more from Edward Di Gangi. Thank you so much again. Thank you all for listening. And you will never know what's going to happen on Authors Up.
It's
So
true.
be back here Sunday evening, 7 p.m. Good night, everybody. Good night, Edward, and thank
Thank
you
you,
again.
Edward.
Good night. Thank you both.